I'll be speaking with Rabbi May. She's a Connecticut resident and has been spiritual leader of Mending Minyan, and she's also part of Jewish Voice for Peace. Good morning.
Good morning.
You've been involved in a lot of protests of Israeli actions in Gaza and the West Bank. Could you describe some of them?
Yeah, so we were reflecting, and I guess my first action that resulted in arrest. One of the larger actions I took was actually in mid-October, maybe on October 18th. It occurred in the Cannon Congressional House building in Washington, D.C., where many folks have their offices, and also it's the hub for media on the
Uh,
Hill in DC. And I believe at that point it was the largest, I think like there were two actions that happened, right? There was a big rally outside, and then simultaneously while that rally happened, I think close to 500 of us occupied that rotunda in the Cannon Congressional House building. And we called for a ceasefire, right? At that point, a ceasefire and a call for a ceasefire wasn't as universal as it has become. And so that was our first and immediate demand. Um, and so we brought Jews together from Jewish Voice for Peace. I believe there was representation from If Not Now and affinity groups from many different organizations. And we sat and we prayed and we chanted and we read testimony from Gaza and actually heard that folks on the ground in Gaza were watching our protest and listening to us read their testimony. And then from there, I went on.
let me stop. So there were other rabbis involved too in that demonstration in the rotunda?
Correct. There were about 24 rabbis and rabbinical students who were leading the protest from the center of the rotunda, and other folks were sitting around us in a circle.
Had you been involved in protests before about this issue?
Yeah.
So it wasn't brand new, but
It was my first arrest in my life,
okay.
but I've risked plenty of times.
Well, let me ask about that. Some people will think that's really odd or improper for a rabbi. How would you answer them?
I believe that it is upon every single one of us to put our bodies on the line, whatever that means for us. So this is a moment in time in which we have an obligation to check our privileges and to ask ourselves, what risk can we take that's just a little bit outside of our comfort zone? Palestinians are asking us to do everything that we can to save lives, which I want to say is a Jewish value, right? There's a Jewish value of pikuach nefesh that we must save lives at any and all costs. So it actually is very rabbinic of me to do that, right? To heed the call of Palestinians in order to save lives. And for me, in my risk assessment, I was able to put my body on the line and to risk and then take a rest. And, you know, for anyone who's listening to this, if that feels scary to you, I think it's important to sit with yourself and ask yourself why. Ask yourself, what risks can you take? You know, for most of us, we cannot even fathom what Gazans and Palestinians are enduring on the ground because it's just so very far from our lived experiences and anything we've ever had to endure. So I think it's important that all of us ask how we can take action in this moment. You know, I recognize that oftentimes direct action and nonviolent civil disobedience are not accessible for all people, but we need every last one of us to be calling our representatives, to be putting our bodies on the lines, to be shutting things down, to be writing letters to the editor, and to really be listening to what Palestinians are saying so that we're able to heed their calls, which means...
Oh, I'm sorry, finish.
Okay. Which means demanding a permanent and immediate ceasefire. And it also means that our demands don't end there. Our demands continue with lifting the siege on Gaza, with ending Israeli occupation of Palestine, and releasing all prisoners and hostages.
So let's talk about some of the other demonstrations or protests that have been involved with since that event at the Rotunda.
Sure. There have been many, right? So as I was saying, there are so many types of actions. So there are big actions in which I've been arrested, and you may have seen me on some, major media channels. So actions like that would include when we shut down Grand Central Terminal in New York City, making it very clear that business cannot go on as usual.
For those who don't know about that, how did you shut down? Did you jump on the tracks or something? What did you do?
We took over the main hall, the main terminal of Grand Central Terminal, and just filled it to the brim with our bodies, chanting and singing and calling out for our demands that I've named, right, beginning with a ceasefire and going from there, and demanding a stop to this genocide, and calling it what it is, and demanding and letting everyone know, right? Every single person. New York, Grand Central Terminal is one of the busiest transportation hubs in the world, and we were getting our message loud and clear to everyone passing through and everyone watching online, that we need to pay attention to what is happening and we need to respond.
The
And
people who were passing through, how did they react?
so I was leading. I was up on a balcony, so I was not on the ground and like necessarily directly engaging with folks. But I can tell you that there are some people that joined our protest, and there's an actually beautiful story. I was waiting in an incredibly long line to get processed after I was arrested. And as I was waiting in that very long line, we were beginning to see people slowly trickle out and be released. For many of the protests that I've been a part of, we all wear kind of the same uniform, and we all wear these black shirts that say like ceasefire now, Jews for ceasefire. I forget exactly what the shirts say. And at one point, I see someone being released, and they're not wearing a black shirt. As a matter of fact, they're wearing a bright blue shirt. And I'm wondering, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden, I recognize this person. And this person is an elder, and is my congregant at Mending Minyan, where I serve as rabbi. And this person was just happened to be passing through Grand Central Terminal that day, attempting to catch the Metro North train back to Connecticut, where we live, saw the protest, joined us, and ended up being arrested with us. And so I'm sure with how busy that station is, that this congregant of mine was certainly not the only person to join our protest. As a matter of fact, now I'm recalling that someone actually walked up the stairs to the balcony to say hi to me, who was not in our uniform, and who had also joined the protest. And I had to say, this is a place where arrests are likely to happen. So thank you for saying hello, and I encourage you to go lower.
Now, not all the protests involved arrest. I saw you at a Hartford demonstration, marching to the offices of our Senator Murphy. I saw you speak there from a distance. What was that like?
Yeah, so there are many different types of ways to take action. And some of those ways are rallying and marching. And I've had the honor to be invited to speak at these rallies. And there are various types, right? So in Hartford, you and I have been at rallies that are led by the Palestinian and Muslim community, and it's been an honor to lend my voice there. And I've also been asked to speak at a really powerful action that took place at Stonewall in New York City, and it was a Juma, the afternoon Muslim prayer, led by queer Muslims. And I was asked as a rabbi to speak and offer some words there. So yeah, it's been an honor to be invited to speak. And I think it's really important for people, and I've heard this reflected to me from many people who've heard me, for people to hear from, but also to know that anti-Zionist Jewish voices exist and anti-Zionist rabbinic voices exist.
So speaking about that, so there's a whole division in Jewish Voice for Peace of rabbis. What size is that? Does it cover? Are there any Orthodox rabbis in that, or are they all in the pro-Israel camp now?
Well, Jewish Voice for Peace itself is an explicitly anti-Zionist organization. So our rabbinical council is made up only of anti-Zionist rabbis or of rabbis who are comfortable being a part of an organization and a part of a rabbinical council that has named that value explicitly. In terms of the broader world, yeah, there's a vast variety of political leanings on Israel and Palestine and Zionism and anti-Zionism across rabbis. And we do range the religious spectrum.
Mhm. Now, I know you were involved with an action with the bridges and tunnels. That shutdown, that was fairly recent, and it wasn't that well covered by the media. So could you mention what that was?
Yeah, so 2 Mondays ago, um, a number of us shut down the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, the Williams Bridge, and the Holland Tunnel all at once on Monday morning, and kind of gridlocked traffic in Manhattan around rush hour or at a very busy time of day. And I do want to lift up that both this action, shutting down bridges and tunnels in Manhattan, and the action at Grand Central Terminal in New York City, were inspired by our comrades at ACT UP, who conducted similar actions way back in the day.
What was ACT UP? We
I
don't
believe
know.
that ACT UP was an organization working to fight AIDS, but you can fact check me on that.
No, I think that's right. But a lot of people may not know that. That goes back a while. So we've talked about all the protests. What has Israel done that has bothered you the most? When did you first think about Israel and the way it was treating Palestinians, and why did that bother you?
I've been thinking about it for a long time. I'm one of a lucky few who grew up in an anti-Zionist household.
Mm.
Whether we use the language of anti-Zionism in our household, I think that's a question up for debate. But I grew up in a household where my father would talk about Palestinian human rights.
Mhm.
And so I knew for my entire life that Palestinian lives matter. And I knew that as a Jewish person, as a secular Jew who never went to synagogue. As a matter of fact, we weren't allowed to, because the one time we tried to go, we were called traitor for the letters to the editor that my dad would write to the paper. Um,
Wow.
But yes, I feel lucky to have grown up in a household that was not Zionist, and to have grown up understanding that Palestinians are, as a matter of fact, not animals like we're hearing right now from Israeli government officials, but that they are, in fact, human beings just like you and I, who deserve respect and dignity and humanity.
Have you been to Israel, Palestine?
I have. So it's a bit complicated. As a part of rabbinical school, there is a requirement to study for a certain amount of time in Israel and Palestine. I did not actually fulfill that specific requirement. But as a part of my acceptance into rabbinical school, I was told that I needed to study both the Hebrew language and Jewish text at the same time. And my time limit, because I wanted to start rabbinical school right away, was like that summer. And the only place in the world that I could really study those two things simultaneously at once was in Israel. So I spent a summer there. But
What year
then,
was that?
2017, maybe.
Uh-huh. Were you just so full of your studies, or were you able to see what was going on in the larger society?
I unfortunately was mostly just able to focus on my studies, and the organization for whom I was doing my studies had some pretty firm guidelines and boundaries that you're not allowed to go to Palestine and this and that. And I pushed that boundary, a couple of times, but on the whole, had my head down. I really wanted to get through rabbinical school, which was not an easy journey as an outspoken anti-Zionist as well as a Chinese American Zionist. So there have been a lot of things going against me. So I've been proud to be outspoken and have had to be a little careful about that, and have a little more freedom, however you define freedom, now that I've officially been ordained.
So where did you do your rabbinical training? What denomination?
Yeah, I was ordained in the Reconstructionist movement.
Or for those, for a lot of even Jews, they know Orthodox, Conservative, Reform. So what is Reconstructionism?
Reconstructionist is just another branch of Judaism that stems out of the conservative movement, uplifts the thinking of Mordechai Kaplan. And I think one significant difference with Reconstructionist Judaism is that we reject the notion of chosenness that is very present elsewhere in Judaism.
So what was that word? Reject what?
We reject the notion of chosenness, that Jews are the chosen
Chosenness. I'm
people.
sorry. My brain was hearing chauvinism. So, okay. Yes. Yeah. Well, maybe let's kind of talk about that just a minute. What is this traditional idea of chosenness?
It's the notion that the Jews are the chosen people. And I think that many people have taken that and tied that in with Zionism. I won't speak too much about this because it's not I haven't done too much study about it. But I think it's quite clear, if Jews are the chosen people, then Jews are the ones to whom should claim Jerusalem, and who should claim this land that they were promised as home.
Mm. Well, final question. What is mending minyan?
Mending Minyan is a Jewish spiritual community in New Haven, Connecticut, and we practice a joy-based Judaism that seeks to decouple Judaism from Zionism. And we are proud to have explicit values of being diasporist, non-Zionist, and explicitly anti-Zionist.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.